The 6 to 7 Figure Show, episode 38. Let's hit it.
Broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun outside Phoenix, Arizona. This is the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Tired of working so hard and having no time? Take your six-figure practice and turn it to a thriving seven-figure enterprise. And now, your host, author, speaker, mentor, and strategist, Frank Bria.
Everybody, welcome to the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I'm your host, Frank Bria, and today I am thrilled to be joined by my good friend, Chris Badgett, who is a natural and authentic teacher, has used that inclination in every business he started or mentored, and basically through video, and he's got a successful podcast that I love as well. You should check it out. We'll talk about it more. Chris shares his extensive knowledge, not just of online learning systems, but of business models, and even more than that. Chris is the CEO of LifterLMS, a tool that encompasses the needs of modern membership course creator. And the tool allows you to create an integrated membership site. He's proud that many of the custom courseworks he's built have grossed over $1 million annually, which is a big deal in that space. Whether or not he's building online courses, he's actually working from his cabin, moved up to Maine. That's awesome. Spending time in nature, performing magic tricks for kids as well. So be sure to say hi to him on Twitter. He's at Chris Badgett, and check him out at LifterLMS. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Frank. It's great to be here. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So LMS, Learning Management System, for most people who don't understand the three-letter acronym, the TLAs that some of us throw around. What does that mean? Can you kind of give a bit of a description for folks who don't know?
Well, I think you have to couch that in terms of three terms. There's the LMS, there's online course, and then there's a membership site. And people kind of intermix this stuff a lot. And they can be similar. Like a course is just like one program. I mostly focus on like training-based membership sites, not coffee subscription memberships. Some people see memberships as a pricing model, but I see it like as a membership site where I'm doing courses plus all these other things. And then a learning management system, like with Lifter, it can handle like all those scenarios. It can flex from like a single online course site to a multi-instructor online school membership program. But I think where I really connect with you and what I talk about a lot with people is the concept of course plus. Like I know you're into building high ticket programs. So it's like, well, course plus what? Like course plus coaching, course plus community, course plus productized service. What's in the stack? Because people need more than video content in their LMS or their membership or their course to get the result. I like to say the information age is over. There's a lot more pieces of the puzzle to put together to really create a transformation or result in another human being.
Yeah. You've just like said three of the things that I'm like super passionate about. So I totally get that. Well, I love that you draw this distinction between, and I've used the phrase course plus a lot for people too. So I love that you call it that. But you know, from the corporate space, learning management systems are not odd. You know, they're all over the place because people use it for corporate learning and things like that. And I think when you look at just the three letters themselves, you kind of poke a hole in a lot of the old, when you call them sort of coffee-based membership sites. You've got learning, so there literally has to be some kind of learning or teaching going on. It's not just throwing out your random ideas or content, you know, every week. There needs to be some kind of management in place. That blows most people's minds, that you would manage the learning of someone, that there would be some active process by which you're helping people make progress there. So I think you've like pointed out those things in the description. And I agree with you. Information economy is absolutely over. I call it a result economy now. People want stuff out of it. So why this area? What got you into learning management? What got you into software?
Well, sort of like your listeners, I was a service provider. So I built websites for clients, and I grew that up into an agency. Eventually, I had it up to like 17 people we were doing big projects, at least in the small business world. Like some of our biggest projects were like $80,000, $50,000. These are like custom membership, training-based membership sites we were building. And, you know, we were hitting that ceiling. I mean, you and I were talking before the show that like sometimes in corporate you get to like around 250, 400,000 and you kind of get a little stuck. And I was like looking around, I'm like, do I want to keep growing to be this like huge agency and take on all that stress? Or do I want to like turn something into a product here? And I just knew like in my heart, I was a product guy more than a service guy. And I'm not one of these guys who hates on clients. I love clients and I love working with clients, but it was just a lot more stressful. And for me, I felt a lot more value when I could scale it up and reach a lot of people. Like there's 10,000 people using Lifter right now. And I love that. And I sleep better at night than like, you know, a portfolio of like 10 to 20 like high-end clients, you know, so.
Yeah. I mean, it's clearly a diversification of income thing. I mean, I think that's a really smart move to make. A lot of service providers have been in the space where they've got like, you know, a bulk of their income based on one person's decision. And especially in the entrepreneurial community, you don't want to like, you know, we tend to be a little flighty, I think, as entrepreneurs. So I don't want to base my income on, you know, someone wakes up on the wrong side of the bed Monday morning and decides to cancel all their stuff. So no, that's great. And was that a tough switch into software for you?
It was. And just by that, I mean, you know, I came from, everything was like first principles for me. Like I didn't have a background in engineering, didn't have a background in business. I didn't mention part of my story is I started creating organic gardening courses. And then I partnered with experts all over the world and I built my own LMS site on WordPress way before all this LMS plugins and things were out here. And so I started to learn the industry. So that's how I kind of got specialized in it. I started blogging about it. That started attracting leads. And that's how I went from like freelancer to, you know, agency guy. But
awesome.
Bring me back to your original question.
No, just whether it was a tough transition, because I know a lot of people who move into tech, that's, you know, from services to tech, there's a lot of gotchas in the tech industry and a software company that you don't find in a services industry. And that's an interesting transition for a lot of people.
Yeah, I hit a lot of those. And I know you're a big fan of frameworks and I am too. One of the ones I like to mention to people is in software, and it's true of service providers or any kind of entrepreneur, when you create something, you can have what's called the walking dead, a modest win or a runaway success. And that doesn't, you could be somebody with the same intelligence level and everything could like end up in one of those buckets. So you got to like not take it personally. So when I knocked LifterLMS into the game, we had a modest win. Our initial launch, I said that, you know, I pre-sold it and then we opened it up for a week. I said, if we get 100 customers, we'll keep going. And we got 42. And this is 5 years ago. And we kept going anyways because you know, I love this. So I had the passion. I wanted to be in the space.
Yeah.
But we had to grow from very small, like going from like 40 to 10,000 is, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
And I had to use the agency. I ran them in parallel for a while. And then they crossed and it, you know, sunset the agency, but there was not a switch. There was no like, okay, today we're a product company.
Yeah, like flipping the switch and saying, yeah. Well, that's really smart. I mean, a lot of people, you know, in the software space, because I went the other way, right? I left software and came into services pretty much. And a lot of people in the software space, you know, they do this, I think, the wrong way. I think the story you've got, there's a number of people who have software companies that have launched them out of a service business. I think they've done a pretty good job. I look at Guy Kawasaki's book, The Art of the Start, and I think he lays out such a brilliant framework for how to launch a software company, because it's consult, build the tools to make the consulting easier, and then sell the tools. And that's fundamentally what you did in that transition. And so there isn't ever going to be a switch. You know, it's it's this continuum, this spectrum. So I think that's a smart way to do it.
In hindsight, it takes some courage, because when I think back now, that really my initial beta testers were some of my high-end clients.
Yeah.
Like with the prototype, like, and these are some of these people are making lots of money and lots of responsibility and risk on the line. And, you know, we delivered a product, but software, you know, it has its bugs and whatnot. And like, definitely the initial version can be underwhelming or whatever.
Right.
So, yeah, it takes some courage to really, you know, bridge that gap.
Of course. Yeah. And there was when I was in tech startups, there was a saying that said, there's a special place in heaven for customer number one, because they have to put up with a lot of crap for the first rollout of a software product.
Yeah.
So you got to find the right person to be that developmental partner with you, that alpha tester. They're not even beta testers.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, okay. So you're working with a lot of companies that are basically putting courses online now. And in basically automating the results orientation of trying to work with people, rather than, you know, doing one-on-one work, trying to automate a lot of that stuff. What are you seeing that's working in that space? Because I know there are a lot of people who are very cynical now about online courses. There's a lot of people who have done some really garbagey work. Something about, you know, equalizing the access has made it easier for folks who really don't care about customer results to get out there. So what are you seeing working now, or any shifts in the course space these days?
Yeah, it's a great question. First, I should say we serve, there's a couple different use cases. We have the entrepreneur, which was our beachhead market, and that's where the majority of our people are. But we see Lifter in use in some universities, some corporations, some internal training, some schools. But if we look at just the entrepreneurs, like the people who are, you know, doing services, or, you know, they're kind of in the expert industry, speaking from the stage, authors, experts, professors, whatever, just wanting to do the online thing. There's a lot going on. You're right. There has been a democratization of the tools. Like we're making a podcast right now. I think it's harder to launch a podcast than it is an online course right now. So that's just throwing that out there. But what's really working is the number one foundational block that just creates a fork in the road is, if I'm talking to somebody or hearing about their project for the first time, and the conversation is around making money online, versus another person who's like really focused on the result they get, like let's say in their service business, or you know, with private clients, or in the classroom or the workshops, and they're like, I have this result, and I think I can get this online by using Zoom this way, and doing these like virtual meetings instead of on location, on-prem stuff and all this. I know which one's going to win. It's going to be that person who's results focused. And I'm not against the money side at all, but it's like an external focus on the learner is, that has to be priority over the, you know, the amount of money you make with your sales page or whatever, although those things are important. That's the first thing I would say. And then the other thing I would just go into that area that we really resonate on is it takes more than just video content for somebody to get a result. You know, community is huge. So like course plus coaching plus community. And that could be group coaching. You can have a private coaching upsell. That's where you can really increase the price. And then the productized service, you can add like other software resources, masterminds. You can add just like, you have to like basically surround that result with the supporting resources while taking a minimalist approach. Like you don't want to overwhelm the person. So you have to be like, you know, minimalist about it. But that's what I see is really working, at least in the high end, like over $1,000 course, $2,000 or $10,000 coaching program or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Those are two real, I mean, the first point you make is fundamentally around results orientation, which kind of I preach all the time. So I love that. I do think that, because I hear those conversations too, where there's sort of this, you know, there's a lot of people out there kind of like it's quick money, you know, make tons of money online kind of thing. But, you know, and you were kind of hinting at this, so I kind of want to bring this point back to a conversation. It's not the money clearly has to be there. I mean, we're not philanthropists, there needs to be some profit in what you're doing. But my feeling is that money is a representation of the value that you're generating for people. So it's not the money in and of itself that's the issue. It's the, I generate value, and this is how I generate value. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. I mean, a lot of people criticize, professional sports players or whatever for the salaries they get paid. But the point is that they may be creating a very small, minute value, but they have a huge audience. And so when you multiply those two things together, you end up with a big number. There's just no way around it. So being able to put something online puts you in front of a bigger audience, but you have to have that value part of the equation. Otherwise, like if that goes to zero, then you're pretty much stuck. So that's I love that you're calling that out. I do think that's a really critical success indicator. Like if you're thinking about results, that's the thing that does it for sure.
There's a couple other just things I've noticed out there, just kind of emerging trends. One is focus on not necessarily going up market like enterprise, but really having a business to business focus and selling in volume. Like I'm seeing more people creating training programs for like an organization or a specific type of company that's then going to need like 50, 100, 1,000 seats, like in this car dealership or in this hospital or in this like court system. Like when people come out of court with this particular situation, they need this type of training. Yeah. I see people really focusing on these like bigger deals than basically selling to themselves or selling to like just one off. I see people get success faster when they figure out kind of that bigger play. And even if they are selling individually, getting a really strong advocate, whether that's like some kind of continuing education board of some kind or some kind of like employer that wants people to have a certain type of training. So really just to think bigger. Those are just a couple emerging trends I'm seeing.
Yeah. So you're talking about leverage basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trying to figure out some way to leverage what you've done across a bigger thing. You said something there, which I think hides a really important point I want to like people to think about, because you just said, don't just sell to yourself. Don't just sell to the kind of person that you are, which I do think a lot of entrepreneurs, how many of us, and I've been guilty of this too, have said, well, I'm my ideal client, and there's room for that. I'm not saying there's not room for that, but you're talking about thinking about leverage in a way that could never possibly be selling to oneself. It's really looking at an enterprise, a larger group of people in enterprise play.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. Like I'm a little meta, like I taught a lot about course creation, course creators or whatever, but so I'm definitely guilty as charged. But I think the classic example is an internet marketing, selling internet marketing to internet marketers. And there's just these really big markets out there. Like, for example, I mentioned I have some courses about organic gardening and permaculture. And I try really hard to market my online course, YouTube videos and LMS tech, build the website videos. I go to some of my old organic gardening videos that I haven't touched and they have like 30,000 views. So like there's these huge markets out there. Just get outside the building a little bit,
We do tend to be a bit like insular, I think, in the digital marketing space. That's true. Yeah. I love how you say that, digital marketing for digital marketing, selling to digital marketers. Yeah, that is true for sure. Well, and that is the promise of the like commercial or corporate or enterprise space. There are these huge markets where you just do one thing out of the park. I've been amazed by the simplicity of some of this stuff where clearly they're accessing huge markets. I mean, people who put, safe driver courses online and are like everyone who's gotten a red light ticket in the whole state of Arizona has to take this class, there are clearly some markets out there. And I love your call to basically think bigger about the market that you're serving and the people that you're talking to. I think it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. There's a lot of pain points out there that are, and even not sexy ones that, can be solved, like getting a ticket or having to get some kind of continuing thing for your job.
Yeah, completely. That's for sure. And there are people who are really passionate about that stuff. You and I might look at it and go,
Yeah.
it seems pretty pedestrian, but other people are like, this is awesome stuff. I don't know. I guess people get into figuring out who's got the right of way. It's a passionate topic, I think, of any driver. But so what would be a guidance or advice you'd give to a service provider at this point who's thinking, okay, I've got a course, but it's not working? Because I think a lot of service providers have tried this before, and it's either not worked for them, or it's been so little, like they've spent more than they've made. What would be some of the advice or guidance you'd give to kind of have people up level that game?
Well, I guess I would just list out a bunch of rabbit holes where I see people get stuck in the mud. One of them is focusing too much on design. So like you can get into like, I need this fancy sales page. I need these amazing graphics. Like some of these best, like really successful courses I see, like the design sucks, to be frank, but it's the problem, not the design. Design is good and it helps, but I see an over focus on that. The other thing I see is trying to automate things too early, and potentially scale things too early. So, like you don't need to build an army of affiliates or do a bunch of paid advertising through Facebook or Instagram or whatever until you've really proven out your offer. And I see people get distracted trying to scale too early or build complex automations. And I'm a huge fan of automations, but, early versions of courses, I forget who I heard said it. It's called the Skittle method. Screw it, do it live. like making the lesson videos.
Yep.
Like imagine the difference if you were running a Zoom meeting, GoToMeeting, whatever, and you're all right, this is week 1, we're going to do this. And you've got like, even if it's a small group of people, 3, 10, 20, 50, whatever, and you just do it live, you have that feedback loop open and people are like, oh wait, what'd you mean by that? Oh, I didn't quite get what you meant. Or they come back with what you asked them to do and it looks like they missed the mark. So when you have that feedback loop open in the beginning, it's when it does come time to automate it and like make the awesome professional video, it's going to be a lot better. Because if you just like start and be like, I'm going to take my service business, I'm going to get a green screen, I'm going to turn the camera on and go, that can work, but I just encourage people to slow down early so that they can move fast later. So those are just a couple rabbit holes.
I love that, especially the last concept about doing it live. I mean, I teach that all the time, but I think people spend way too much time trying to figure this stuff out under the assumption they've got it right the first time, which they never do. I tell people, whatever you do right now, it's wrong. It's wrong. Just and get comfortable with that, get okay with it. Like the first time it meets live real human beings, they're going to go, I don't understand anything that you're saying about that. And you're going to have to figure out how to re-explain it a different way. It's totally fine. Or you find out that module 6 should have been module 4. It happens all the time with anyone who does that. So I love that advice. It's great.
There's a challenge too, especially with service providers where, especially if you do it in person, you come in, you're in a boardroom or a meeting room, and you're doing the service and people are interacting, but on the internet, the behavior is very different. So there's like this translation period where you have to figure out, like people will literally, you will be talking to them through your video and they'll like literally get up and leave or open up another tab or go to Facebook. They'll do things they would never do to you in person. And it's not bad. It's human nature. We're all guilty of it, but you have to figure out like, that's why this whole minimalism thing is important. You got to get people getting results early so they get like really hooked, and you have to develop that intrinsic motivation inside of them to like, they want to come back because distraction is lurking everywhere.
Yeah. This is actually one of the things that I was fascinated by because early in my career when I was in academics, I actually taught college for a while. And then I went online and did some online teaching because when I became adjunct professor and then just was traveling for consulting work. And so I couldn't be in the classroom. and how to do everything online. And it is different. Like they are totally different things. I don't think people really understand that as much, but in the early days of online teaching, because I'm old enough to know what that was, people thought they could just basically put video lectures online and that was it. And we were confused at the beginning as to why grades were low, people weren't understanding, dropout rates were really high. We didn't know what was going on. And then we started experimenting with a lot of really different interactive things that you would never do in a classroom. Like, I mean, in a math class, we would start a discussion group online and have people share, information about a particular topic. And you would never do that in a live classroom. You don't have the time for that. Although, certain classroom behaviors are starting to change, but I just think it's fascinating because in the education space, we kind of went through this learning curve, gosh, in the late 90s, early 2000s, kind of as the internet started to really take off in education. And we're kind of like learning these lessons all over again in entrepreneurship to do this that way. So those are all great insights. Question for you, and I want to kind of pivot a little bit. So they've got people who are thinking about leveraging automation and software in their own business. What advice did you wish you had at the beginning of starting your software company that you would share with other people? Which one thing, if you could go back into the past and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
In terms of automation?
Yeah, in terms of actually starting a software company, getting into tech, doing technology product design and development.
Well, one is just like more of a soft thing where go easy, like learn how to identify a positive signal with low volume. So I was really stressed for a while, like, is this going to work? Is this going to work? But looking back, there was a lot of signal and just like engagement happening that it's like, dude, you're going to be fine. Just ride the wave, like keep going, keep improving it. So I think, at least for me, because I'm kind of a bootstrapper type, I would have appreciated just learn how to start small and realize when it's working at a small scale and go easy on yourself. That'd be one thing. Another thing that went really well for me is I have a business partner who's technical engineer guy. And originally I had a third business partner he's no longer in the mix, but I couldn't imagine, at least me as a non-technical co-founder, like just what we've been able to accomplish together is amazing. And I wish someone had told me just more, like really focus on your differences and really doing that, which we do and we did, but that's literally been the number one key to our success. And going back to like internet marketers to internet marketing and so on, like my business partner is absolutely nothing like me, and we have 100% different skill sets and we're better for it. So sometimes I know people who are able to go it alone successfully, but for me personally, I really enjoy having a partner.
Yeah, I know very few people who don't have a good technical, or I mean, this is sort of classic software startup stuff to have a business co-founder and a technical co-founder. It's almost so common that there are whole websites where you can basically pair up, a business like co-founder
dating.
with it's like tech dating.
That's funny.
Where you find a technical co-founder to match your business and vice versa. Because there's also technical folks who can't sell and can't market, and they're looking for someone to pair up with to do all this stuff. And those pairings, when they are done well, it's really strong. So it doesn't surprise me at all to hear you kind of identify that as a strength. That's a really powerful thing. But I think more in depth to that is this concept that you brought out about understanding what your strengths and opportunities are, what your weaknesses are, because everyone has them, and being able to fill those in. Every good CEO I've ever met, from smallest company up to Fortune 500, they are very clear about what they do well and very clear about what they do not do well, and they are not afraid to find someone to fill those gaps in. That's a really important leadership quality, I think.
Yeah. And one thing we did a little ways into Lifter, we went to, it felt like a stretch at the time. We invested some money to go to a small mastermind event of about 30 people that in the similar space. It was actually out of the country even. But like we walked away just hanging out with our tribe and network. And, you know, we operate remotely. So it's, my community is not necessarily surrounded with other like tech entrepreneurs, internet marketers, and coders. So, coming out of that conference, I was like, whoa, I wish I had invested in getting to know my industry and this whole kind of masterminding thing a little bit earlier. That was another big one.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great insight. I mean, fundamentally, the networking. I think people do underestimate the power of the investment in networking, and it sounds like also, if I understood correctly, this was also essentially your user base, wasn't it? Or you're really understanding what their needs were as well?
Well, this mastermind was more in the software development space.
Okay, so yeah.
But user base, I do go to conferences as well. Like we sponsor conferences. This is a big software thing. It's called Get Out of the Building. I go down, like rub shoulders. I'll take my customers out to lunch. I'll run into them at WordPress has a thing called Word Camps that happen all over the country and the world. I'll go there. I'll run into the users. I'll hang out with them. Like some of those 42 people that first bought my software, I've been in almost bi-weekly contact with them.
Wow.
And not all of them, but like
Sure.
3 of them come to mind that like, I know my customer avatar like very closely, and it's in a really value adding way, a give and take relationship. It's healthy.
Yeah.
That's been critical too.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, the software companies I've seen be really successful have very strong user groups, very strong communities they've built up for people who use the software, and those companies are in close contact with them and understand exactly what they need and what their jobs are like on a day-to-day basis and what the pain points are. One big mistake I see a lot of software companies make, and I'm hearing you kind of calling this out sort of implicitly through this, is they're a tech company first, and so they've got a fancy schmancy automation, of something, and they go out and they basically try to find a place to sell it rather than the other way around, which is really understanding, what the user needs and what their problems are, and then saying, hey, we got a solution for this. We can make your life easier. That's really great. That's awesome.
Yeah, there's a saying, whoever's closest to the customer wins, and I try to live by that.
That's awesome. That's great. Chris, we're out of time, unfortunately. I apologize. I'd love to continue talking with you about this, mostly because you use the same kind of language I do, which is why you and I get along so well. But thanks so much for sharing this stuff with us. This is really important. I think everyone who is in the service provider space needs to be thinking how to automate the results in some way, shape, or form, leveraging an audience. And you've given us some really good ideas on that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, well, it's great to be here. Thanks for chatting with me.
Absolutely. Last question. For those people who want to connect with you more, find out a little bit more about what you guys are up to, what's a great way for them to get that conversation kicked off?
If you're looking to build an online course or training-based membership site from a website that you own and control, check us out at LifterLMS.com. And if you really want to go into the course creator like life and what people struggle with and connecting with other resources like Frank, we have a podcast called LMS Cast.
And that is an amazing podcast, by the way. I'm not just saying that because you asked me to be on it one time a while ago, but it's a good podcast. I'd recommend you check it out. Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it. And thanks so much for being with us. Thank you, everyone, for being with us on this episode of the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I'm your host, Frank Bria. And again, if you are a service provider, I really do highly recommend you start thinking about results automation. I really like the way of talking about it from a results perspective. So thanks again, Chris, for being with us. Thank you for spending your time with us, and we will catch you next time. All right, everyone, take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.